Okay, hello and welcome to E-Rate Basic Training. I am Krista Burns at the Nebraska Library Commission. My official title here is the Special Projects Librarian, and one of my duties as that is the E-Rate Coordinator, State E-Rate Coordinator for libraries in the state. I do notice that on the session today we do have a couple of people from schools, and that's cool. A lot of the things, most of the things that I do in the session today will be library related, but the basics of doing E-Rate, submitting your forms, all of that will be applicable to you as well. Specifics for schools, though, I do not know a lot about that, is because the Department of Education handles all of that. So if you do have any questions about that, you can go to them. Sue Ann Witt is someone who you may already probably know. She is the E-Rate coordinator specifically for schools in Nebraska, so she'll be the one that could help you with any of your school-specific E-Rate issues and questions. So we're going to go through some basics of E-Rate and some information about some of the forms, and we'll get right to it here. So some of this, some of you have done E-Rate before, some of this may be a refresher, maybe things you already know. If you're brand new to E-Rate, this will be perfect for you because we are going to go through everything, all the basics of it as well for anyone who has never approached E-Rate before. So, what is E-Rate? E-Rate is a federal program that provides discounts to schools and libraries so they can afford their telephone, internet, any of those kind of bills that you may have in your libraries. It is funded through what the universal service fee, which you may see on bills. Your telecommunications providers actually have this fee that they pay, your phone company, your internet service provider, whoever. And all of this money is put into a fund to give discounts on the telephone and internet access. It was created originally by the Telecommunications Act of 1996, in which the telecommunications providers were ordered to give a discount to schools and libraries at a discounted rate. It actually also covers, as you can see in the second bullet here, healthcare providers. There's also hospitals and anything that is healthcare related also get a discount as well. The Act was created in 1996, and they told the FCC, go ahead and establish the rules for this and figure out how it all works. And the first year of doing this that you could do E-Rate was in 1998. They had to, that's when they first had everything organized and ready. So the FCC is the government agency that oversees the entire E-Rate program. They make the rules and keep track of all of that for us. Universal Service Administrative Company, called USAC, is their acronym. They are the actual company, a non-for-profit, that actually administers the E-Rate program. They are the ones who you are always sending all your forms to, who send you all the letters back and everything. They also have, along with the E-Rate program, which is for the schools and libraries, they also have 3 other programs that also offer discounts. The healthcare one I mentioned before, one for people in low income, and one for areas where they have high cost of all these services. So there's actually 3 other programs that USAC also administers. We are concerned with the Schools and Libraries Division of USAC, the SLD, and that is who is responsible for E-Rate, all the discounts for the libraries and the schools. So you'll hear me throughout the session talk possibly about SLD or USAC interchangeably, because they are both, SLD is the specific division within the larger company of USAC that we deal with as schools and libraries. So, whoop, I went a little too far. Yes. E-Rate runs on a funding year, which goes from July 1st through June 30th of any time period. So right now, the funding year that you will be applying for with new forms at the moment is for 2012. It's called funding year 2012 based on when it starts. So it goes from July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013. So what you're applying for now is you are thinking about getting a discount for the future. Originally, they had set aside $2.25 billion for the E-Rate program, but starting with 2010, they're increasing the cap now every year based on inflation. They finally realized that that was something that libraries were dealing with as well, so we should have a little bit more money available for them too. So now in 2010, it was 2.27, 2011, it was 2.29, and we don't know yet what the cap will be for 2012. That has not been announced yet, but it will be going up every year, so there'll be more money available for everyone. Who can apply? Libraries and library systems, so if you are a multi-library system, which we don't have here in Nebraska, but they can. Schools and school districts and consortiums. If you have a group of libraries or schools together that are consortia, they can, if they get together to purchase their internet or their phone, they could also apply together for the E-rate discount. Here in Nebraska, specifically about libraries, that means all public libraries are eligible. Any public library in the state is eligible for this. If you hear or talk to other librarians, colleagues of yours in other states, you may get a different explanation of who is eligible. E-rate does, FCC does have rules about who can be eligible, but then they let the state decide at the state level how that actually plays out. Looking at some other states' E-rate information, I've noticed California, I believe, for example, lets schools, universities, museums, anybody apply for E-rate. So here in Nebraska, it's only public libraries. So if you do talk to people in other states, you might have a different answer for that. How much of a discount can you get? You can get anywhere up to 90% off of your bills. So this is a discount off, and it could be as low as 20%. It depends. So in Nebraska here, we average about 60 to 70, sometimes in the 80s. So we're about in that. Most of our libraries in the state fall into getting 60 to 70% off on their telephone and internet bills. So it's a pretty substantial. It can be a pretty substantial amount of money. Excuse me. The discount is based on two things. The percentage of students that are in the National School Lunch Program in whatever school district in which the library is located. So not just the school that's closest to you or whichever building is nearest, but figure out where physically the library is located in what school district, and then you find out the percentage of students that are eligible for the school lunch program. Now, eligible, this is very important. It is the number of students that are eligible, not the number that participate, because the number that are eligible will be more. There are some people that don't apply for it, even though they are eligible for it. Some parents don't go through filling out the forms, don't want to, whatever. So make sure you're paying attention to the eligible. And also that it does only include the kindergarten through 12th grade, not pre-K. So you have to make sure that if there are students who are pre-K getting the school lunch program, receiving it, that you cannot include them when you do your calculation. In addition to that, you decide if where you are located, based on U.S. Census data, is urban or rural. Most of Nebraska is rural, obviously. Mostly urban would just be around Lincoln and Omaha. So most libraries in the state would fall under the rural category, which is good because in some of the levels that will give you a higher discount. So to calculate this discount, it's 3 different steps: finding out those 2 numbers and then using a matrix that USAC provides to figure out how much of a discount you get. And I've got the URLs here. They're also linked off of our page, and so you don't have to try and scribble them all down now. They're in the PowerPoint presentation. They're linked off of the site for this session. But on the Nebraska Department of Education website, there is, they track the school lunch data. So they have all the statistics there that you can go and look up. I have heard that in the past, when I've done these trainings, that the Department of Education did not provide this information. You had to call your individual schools or the superintendent of the school district that you were in, and it was a lot harder to get the numbers. Some schools had privacy concerns with giving out the information, although you don't need or want any of the specifics of who the students are. You just want a total number of. So it used to be a lot more difficult, but now it is actually all posted on the Department of Education website. And then on the USAC's own website, they have where you can look up if you're urban or rural. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to pop over to, and hopefully it'll, yeah, there we go. What you should be seeing now, this is the Department of Education website. This is that URL that's in the PowerPoint that I linked to. And they've got a lot of statistics on this page, but if we scroll down in the second section here, is the free and reduced lunch counts by school. And you see they started putting them up here they've got the ones up here now back to 2007, but you always want to look at the most recent one. Right now for 2012, we're looking at the 2011/2012 school lunch counts. And it is an Excel spreadsheet. And this is what first comes up. There we go. I've had lots of people tell me when they go to this that they're confused. There's no information. It's just these warnings. There's 2 sheets on this expel spreadsheet. If you look down here at the bottom, there's the warning page, which is the one that comes up by default, and the second sheet says data in the lower left corner here. And if you click on the data one, then you get all the actual numbers for the schools. It's just arranged by county, and then all the schools within that county, so you'll just need to know what district your library is in and the schools that are in that district, and total up for all of them the students that are eligible. They've got here listed the number of students enrolled, and then in that column, and then the free reduced column is the number of students eligible for their school lunch program. And you see here, it doesn't even give you the number of students who applied at all. It's just the number of it that are eligible. You can also see on some of these, it does give that PK through 5th grade in this case. If your school, any of your schools do show that as the listing rather than just K for kindergarten, you will need to call the school or superintendent and find out what the numbers are minus the pre-K kids. So they should be able to give you the numbers to removing that from the calculation. After you have looked up and have that number, then you can switch over and look at the USAC website. That's that second URL that I gave you on the spreadsheet. And this is the page that is for, where you can see what your rural or urban classification is. And you see here they have all the states listed. So we just click on Nebraska. And the way this works is if you're listed here, you're rural. If you're not listed here, you're county. Not listed here, you're urban. So this would pretty much be, I think, every county except for, as I said earlier, where Lincoln and Omaha are. I don't think anything else is considered urban enough in Nebraska. So then, once you have both of those, your school lunch data and your urban or rural status, then you look at the discount matrix to determine what your discount is. And here on the PowerPoint, I've also given you a link to, there's a really good part of the, on the USAC website, instructions and example of how to do the calculation, especially when you have multiple schools. You've got to figure out amongst all of them how the total is. That will help you. And if you apply online, all of this, everything you can do with E-rate can be applied for online. The math is done for you, actually. All you've got to do is plug in the school lunch numbers and the urban rural status, and then it'll do it all for you. So that's pretty cool. This here is the discount matrix that you then use. You figure out if you're urban or rural for those 2 columns, and then the percent of students that are in your school district that are eligible. And you can see here up to 50%, if you're rural, you get a higher discount. So that's a good thing. As I said, most of the libraries in Nebraska fall higher in the 60 to 70% discount rate. So some of us are having, it depends, your students eligible down to, could possibly be down to only 20% of your student body being eligible for the school lunch program gets the 60% discount for a rural library. So up to this point, this is something you can do without having filled out any forms, without having submitted anything officially to for E-rate. It's you don't have to worry about any of that. I always tell libraries, if you're doing this for the first time or you're not sure about where you are, do at least this. Figure out what your discount is, and then decide, is it worth it to do all these forms and all this work that is going to be coming to get the discount. And it's going to depend on how much your bill is, what your budget is like. If you're only getting 20% off, maybe it's not worth the work. But if you're getting 50, 60, 70% off, that could definitely be worth doing the E-rate. E-rate does take some time. It is an ongoing process throughout the year. There's forms you fill out at certain times during the year. But if you can get a good discount on it, it may totally be worth it. I know some libraries have mentioned to me that they have boards who have told them, don't bother, it's too much work. We don't even want you to waste your time on it. Go through this part at least and tell them, you know what, we could save 70%, we could save 80%. Maybe you want to revisit your idea that it's too much work. Also in the past, I do know, not from my own personal experience, I only started doing E-rate myself only about 2 or 3 years ago, but I have heard from other people that it was very difficult program, very hard to, stressful. The forms were not easy to fill out. There was too much work to it. It wasn't a streamlined program at all. It's gotten easier. Definitely. There's been a lot of changes to the forms and the processes to try and make it easier for everyone. So if you also have previous board members or previous librarians who may be telling you it's a terrible, terrible process, don't bother, it's too much work, try it out anyways. It has changed. As I said, they've always made updates to it, so the idea is it should be easier for you. They want to give you this money. They can't do anything else with it. That 2-point-something billion, it's earmarked for this specifically. It can't just be put into some other department or some other agency to use in the federal government. They want to give it away to you. However, it is the government, so they do have to go through certain steps and there's certain processes and fill out the forms. So there is work to it and there are rules to follow. But if we break it down and just go through it step by step, and each form you have to do at a certain time of year, hopefully the idea is not as difficult for you. Does anybody have any questions at this point about figuring out your discount, figuring out who's eligible, what's eligible? Okay. So what can you get a discount on? What is E-ratable? Every year the FCC publishes what they call their eligible services list. It's about 50 some odd pages. This year, actually, I printed it out. I have it right here. I think I ended up with 55. Yes, 55 pages long. That includes a pretty large index and a glossary of terms, which is very helpful, let me tell you. So it is a huge document, but it lists everything that you could possibly get a discount on. And they post it on their website. I've given you the URL there. And this is the page. When it pops over, that is on. And you can see here they actually have the eligible services list for the last couple of years. They have 2010, 2011, and 2012. You need to make sure you're using the correct list for whatever funding year you are applying for. So right now, the new forms, new process you'll be starting, you'll be using that 2012 list. The older lists are here because you may be working on, will be working on multiple years at the same time. So you do need to still refer to the older lists. The funding years and filling out the forms for the different funding years do cross over each other. So you will be working on forms and applications and things for 2011 at the same time as you're starting the process for 2012 and possibly finishing up things for 2010. That can happen, so they do have them out there. Just make sure you always look at the correct list for whichever year you are working with at the moment. So the eligible services list is broken up into two groups. They call them Priority 1 and Priority 2. Priority 1 services are funded first. They look at all of those applications first and fund all of them and figure out how much money they need to put out. And then after that, they go back and look at the Priority 2 ones. And they start with the neediest applicants, neediest being the ones who will get the highest discount, starting with the 90%, 80%, and going down from there. So if your discount is only possibly going to be 50 or 60% on anything, odds are you won't even get Priority 2 if you apply for it. It doesn't hurt to apply anyways, and we'll get into how you do all that, but odds are you won't. The lowest they've usually gone down is into the 70s about, and then they run out of money. Priority 1 is your basic telephone service, your local, your long distance, however you receive that. 800 numbers, fax phone lines, whatever you have for that, and your basic internet connection, the monthly bill that you pay for your internet access. That's commonly what most libraries in Nebraska are applying for. I look at your applications every year just to track what you're doing, and 99.9% of libraries in Nebraska are doing just that Priority 1 services, the basic telephone and the basic internet. Priority 2 would be only if you are doing something like new construction for a new building possibly, or for a new lab even, or just new computers being installed, upgrading the network that you have and the wiring that you have right now. That's what that internal connections is for. Basic maintenance would be the ongoing maintenance of those internal connections. If you have to have repairs done on it or upgrades, that kind of thing, that will be the basic maintenance of those connections that you had installed. Now I'm going to go through a few of these things here, but not the entire 50 some odd pages of that eligible services list. This is just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can get a discount on, the most common things you might be interested in doing, but look at that list to see what is on it, to see what you would want to do. For telecommunications, under Priority 1, as I said, this is your basic local long-distance phone service. If you use voice over IP, something like Skype or whatever, that would be what you would use. Cell phone, if you have a cell phone the library pays for you to have, you could include that and get a discount on that. If on the cell phone you have a data plan for email or internet access, that you would apply for under the internet access category. Under Priority 1 still, but it would be considered internet access, not just basic telecommunications. Also, if you have a connection of some sort, DSL line, T1 line, satellite service, however you're receiving your telecommunications through, those you can get a discount on as well under the telecommunications category. Under the internet access category, this is your basic fee, as I said, your monthly fee for getting internet into your building. So whatever you pay monthly to your service provider, this is what you can get a discount on here. Other things that also would fall under this category, if you pay for an email service, lots of times now there's free email out there, but if you did pay for that, if you paid extra to have wireless in addition to your wired internet, you could put that on here. Voice over IP once again, and web hosting. If you have someone out there who is hosting the website for the library, you can get a discount on that. Now, under internal connections, this is Priority 2. We're jumping down to that second priority, the lower one that gets looked at last. This would be for that on-site cabling, the installation of wiring, upgrading of wiring into rooms in the library that you might have done. So if you had to bump up your internet and it needed to install new wiring in order to do that, and their service provider charge you for it, that would be something you could pay for with this. If you had to build a whole new computer lab, if you're doing that, you can get a discount on all of that construction. So anyone doing new building construction, this is where that could fall under, and you could get a discount on these kind of things that are part of your building construction. And then after that, if there's basic maintenance of those connections, as I said, upkeep, basic configurations, upgrades, if a squirrel gets in the wall and chews on your wires, you may need to have that repaired and hire someone come and do that. You can get a discount on that as well, and that would also fall under that Priority 2. And the last thing that's here in eligible services list is their miscellaneous charges. This is things that don't just fall under one category or another, but could be under any of them, so they put them under the miscellaneous category. It has its own separate section in that eligible services list. And this is basically the taxes and those extra things that are always on your phone bills and your internet bills. There's always the basic charge and then, 10 different taxes or fees. And some of these fees, this is not an entire list of it. The fee, the actual Universal Service Fund fee itself, the money that goes into this, taxes, 911 fees, there's a whole list of them on the eligible services list. Definitely take a look at it because this will get you even more of a discount on these things. Now, on each bill, they're usually little, 50-something cents, $1 something, but over a whole year, they will add up, and you are eligible. You are allowed to get these at a discount as well, so no reason not to go ahead and apply for them if they're on your bill there. So, any questions about what is eligible for E-rate? What can or can't you apply for? No? Okay. On to the information about the forms, the scary part, the part that people hate. There are 4 basic forms in the E-rate process. Depending on how you do your last step in this process, you may only fill out 3 of them, and we'll get to that when I get into the actual specifics of the forms themselves. The 4 forms, the Form 470 is the first form. That's the one that you may be filling out right now, letting people know I want to receive some sort of service, letting people know I want a telephone service and I want internet service, or whatever you want. Form 471 is the second form where you let USAC know who you picked to be your service provider. Form 486 is the third one where you tell them that we signed our contracts, everything's good, and we're started receiving the service. And then the last one, step 4 here, 472 or 474. This is the invoicing step where you then tell USAC, I'm paying my bills, now give me my discount. And the difference between here is whether you submit a form or whether your service provider submits a form, depending on how you're going to receive your discount. And I'll get into that when we get into these specifics, a lot more details about each of these forms. So you definitely have to do all the first three. Step 4, it will depend. All of these forms are available online, and I give you the URL here for the USAC website to submit them online. They are also available in paper as well. You do not have to do them online. I know some people have had difficulty with doing them online with their internet connection, or on the USAC side, the system or the database having connection issues, and especially when a deadline's coming up. Something like that will happen. If you don't want to do them online or can't, that's perfectly fine. They have paper versions of everything as well. And then you just fill it out in paper and mail it in. Online filing is, of course, quicker, and with you doing all the entry and not having to fill out a form, then you mail it to them, and then they data entry in it themselves. That gives more of a chance of errors happening along the process, so it can make it a little easier. For everything that you do with E-Rate, you want to keep 5 years worth of paperwork. Forms that you send in, letters that they send you, any documentation you've used that's related to E-Rate, you need to keep for 5 years after the last date of service. For last date of service, we're talking about that funding year that ends on a June 30th. So June 30th, 5 years back, would be how long you need to keep your everything related. This is because USAC or the FCC can come through and do audits or checks on what's going on with your applications for at least 5 years if they want to. Sometimes they do it just as we're checking up and making sure the process is working okay, and sometimes there appears to have been an error somewhere, or we're questioning something and we need to ask you about it. So, but they can do it for up to 5 years, going 5 years back. So definitely keep that much. Anything older than 5 years, you can feel free to toss. They cannot come back to you any farther than, look back any farther than 5 years. And also, you do not have to keep all of these in paper. You do not have to keep binders full of things or files full of things. You can keep all of this electronically. If you want to scan in the letters they send you, or scan in into somewhere on your hard drive your forms that you're sending them, that is perfectly fine, just as long as you can get a hold of it and give them a copy of whatever they ask for when they ask for it. So any documentation you use to work on your forms, all of that as well, you can make it all electronic if you want to. You don't, but you can also keep it paper. Here at the Commission, I have big, fat, like 2-inch or so 3-ring binders. This is a carryover from the previous people that used to do E-Rate here at the Commission, and I just keep them that way so far. But you can do whatever works for you, but definitely 5 years so that you can get a hold of it if necessary. Now, this is a screenshot of, there it goes, the USAC website, the URL I gave you for applying online. This is just the main page, usac.org/SL, and that's for specifically the schools and libraries section of the USAC website. Gets you right to the section that's all about what we're doing. And you can see over there on the left is their menu, and they've got, I'm going to show you some of these other things on here as well that's on their website later, but for right now I'm just showing you where the Apply Online link is to go and do these all online. And when you click on there, that'll bring up this page, which is a page with all the forms that you need to fill out, your 470, 471, and 486, and ways to create online all of these forms. One thing to be very aware of in this, you'll see here, you'll notice at the top it says use Internet Explorer 6, the very first bullet, use Internet Explorer 6.0 and above. Other browsers may cause errors. What they really should say, other browsers won't work. It is only, these forms, online forms, are only written, programmed to work in Internet Explorer. You cannot use Firefox or Chrome or Safari or any other browsers that you might want to. You can try, but it's not going to work. There's going to be something's going to break somewhere along the line. It might seem like it's working, but then somewhere it just doesn't carry over some question of yours. By accident, I've opened it up in Firefox many times, and I immediately know that it's not going to work because all those wonderful, beautiful blue buttons you see down there, all in nice straight lines and columns, they're not. They are all over the place, and the whole, even just the design of this page looks horrible in Firefox. So that reminds me, oh, got to pop back over to Internet Explorer and use that instead. Everything else on their website, all of the other things that you might go to, oops. go back. All these other things on the menu on the left-hand side, those everything else there you can go and use any browser for. It's not a problem. The only thing that specifically has to be in Internet Explorer is submitting the forms online. Now there is, from this page, you can see I've highlighted a link here. It says required forms page. This is where you can get the print copies of the forms. They're in PDF there. You can just print them out, fill them in, mail them in. Also here is where the instructions are. I highly recommend reading and using the instruction documents that they have here. I use them all the time to fill our forms. When you guys call me with questions, 90% of the time I end up going and looking at those PDF instructions. They are very detailed. They talk about each question, what you would want to say, why you would want to, why you want to answer this question, how you want to answer it, where you can find the information to answer it. Everything is on those instructions, so those are very useful to use. You can also use the printed forms as cheat sheets to submit, to fill out ahead of time, and then jump over to actually using the online form. That's always good too, because then you can see ahead of time all the questions that you might need to be answering, instructions about all of them, and then go here to actually submit them online. What's nice also about submitting online here, as you can see, is you can create forms, the three main forms. Either there's a create form button and there's an interview button. The interview button kind of takes you through it in more of a questioning section type of application, where it says, instead of just saying here's the blank field, type in the information we want, it says how many students are in your school lunch program in your libraries in the school district. So it gives it to you in a different way. In the end, you're still submitting the form the same way, whether you use whichever one of those top two buttons you use, create or interview. It's just a different way of guiding you through the form. And I can't tell you which one is better or not. They both are fine. Some people have said they just prefer the interview or they prefer the main one. Try both of them and just go with whichever one you like. Like I said, they both end up with a form submitted in the end. You can see also for all of them, they have a continue incomplete button. All of these forms will save your work as you're going. So you don't have to say, I have to submit this form and I have to fill it all out now or else. You can stop in the middle, walk away if you get interrupted, whatever, and then go back to it and continue the form where you left off. It doesn't have a save button or anything that would intuitively let you know, oh, let me save this before I exit. It just does it for you, so you just have to trust that it's there. But you can always go there to continue them incomplete. You can also see you can display or search for posted ones. So you can see what you submitted before, so you can go back and look at a form. Under the 471, the second from the bottom there, as application status link. This is really good for finding out where you are in the process. And when we get into the forms themselves, you'll find out about how this all works. But this 471 is the one where after you submitted that, you're waiting to hear if you're going to get your money, if you're going to be funded. And you can track how it's going through their processes by using the application status search. Look up your application and it will tell you where they are in reviewing your application and looking through it, so you can just see what's going on with your form. Excuse me. Any questions about applying? Okay. This is a general timeline of all the different forms you would submit and their various deadlines. Every year, the actual dates of deadlines does change. It's not the same dates every year. So you can see here we have specifically put into the PowerPoint the dates for this year coming up, the funding year 2012, because we do know them. But every year that's going to vary. I also have this timeline on our E-rate website on the Library Commission page, and it's a more generic timeline. It doesn't have the specific dates, but it's just really good guideline for what you do first in the order that everything happens. And we're going to go through each of these forms and all the things that happen in more detail. But this just gives you a good overview of it. The funding year, right now, the 2012 funding year that we're working on applying for, July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013. The Form 470, that's your first form. The deadline right now Now we know the deadline for the 470 is February 21st, 2012. That's the last day that you can post the 470. And this has to do with the 28-day filing period that I'll get into. The 471 has a specific filing window. There's a certain 3-month-ish time period when that form can be submitted. Everything else can pretty much be submitted at any time that you want to throughout the year, depending on where you are in the process, but the 471 has only this very short window of when you can submit it. That window for this year opens up on January 9th and ends on March 20th. Please note here also that the times that I have here, noon and 11:59, that is Eastern Standard Time because they are based in Washington, D.C. So for us here in Nebraska in Central Time Zone, it would be open up at 11 a.m. actually on January 9th and close at 10:59 p.m. on March 20th. The 470 has to be available for 28 days in order to receive bids and quotes from people service providers that may want to give you a quote. So once we know the Form 471 filing window, we count back 28 days from that March 20th date, and we can find out what is the deadline for the 470. This was actually just announced right before Thanksgiving, so until then we didn't know, but now we do. So we have our dates for that. After the 471, you go into review, where their program integrity assurance people review your applications and decide if you get your money or not. And then you get a funding commitment decision letter sent to you. And that's the next step in the process, letting you know you got your money. Well, your money's been allotted to you. You haven't been given it yet, but they've approved your application. You will get money. After that, you have to submit your 486 form. This lets them know that thanks for the money, and yes, we're receiving the service. We have started getting our phone service. We have started getting our internet service. For some reason, a lot of people skip this step or miss this step and then never actually get their money. They do 470, 471. They get their letter saying you've gotten your money, and then they stop. I haven't really had anyone tell me why they stop, but I do guess that it may be they've received a letter saying, yes, you've gotten your money, and they think they're done. Yay, I finished. I've successfully applied and received funding. Well, not exactly. You've applied and been told that money has been committed to your library, but you still have to now ask to get that money, and that's what the 486 starts that process of, yep, we actually received the service we said we were going to get. We're getting our phone service. We're getting our internet. After they get that form, then you do the invoicing form, and this is the one that actually gets you the discount money in one way or another. You can get a discount on your bills, or you can get a reimbursement check after the fact. And that's the difference between whether you submit the form or not, and I'll get to that when we get into the real details of each one of these forms. You can appeal some of this information as well. If you don't agree with the amount of, if they reduce your amount of funding or they decline to fund you for something, you can put in an appeal and say, I don't think this is right. I think we should have gotten this. Please look into it and let me know. I definitely recommend that. If you're not happy with something or you think they did something wrong, do it. It's just they have just a letter you send them explaining what you think is wrong, and they will look at it and try and do it. As I said earlier, they want to give you your money, but they do have to follow all their rules, and sometimes they miss something or they just need some more information, some more documentation from you to get it through the system. But definitely, if you think something doesn't look right or you're not happy, go about doing an appeal. I've known multiple libraries have done it and have gotten their discounts. Now, as you can see on here also, for the different forms you get, at the 470 it says you'll receive a receipt notification letter. 471 you get a receipt of an acknowledgement letter. After you send in your 46, you also get a letter saying they've received that. All of these letters come from USAC. You submit your forms either in paper or online, whichever way you want to, and they send everything to you in the mail. When they do send you all of these letters, they are color-coded by year, so to help you keep everything organized on your side and know what letters they're sending you and what it's about. The upcoming year, the 2012 one that we're applying for now, the letters will be canary, as they call, bright yellow. Last year it was blue, the year before that pink, and you can see they just rotate through the colors, pink, blue, yellow, pink, blue, yellow. So when you get these, this is really nice, I think, because whenever I get something from them in the mail, I open it up and there's this bright crazy colored piece of paper, I know, this is something E-rate related. Let me look at it and read it and see if there's something I'm supposed to be doing next. So this really helps you keep them organized. This is great in my binders or in any files you might have. You'll have all this paperwork in a color for a whole year, and you can keep everything together. Just by eyeballing it, you can tell what's from what year. If you scan your papers in, if you can do it in color, that would help with that too. But if you're scanning it in and just keeping everything electronically, you don't have the colored paper anymore. But they do send it to you this way every year. So that's very helpful for your filing and keeping track of everything. So any questions at this point about the forms? As I said, we're going to get into the some details of each of these forms in a little bit. Okay, there's a couple of other things that before you start submitting your forms that you need to look into and decide if it's something you need to worry about and do or not. One of those things is technology planning, writing a technology plan of some sort for your library. Starting with last year, 2011, if you're only requesting anything priority 1, you do not need a tech plan. So this would be your basic phone service, your basic local, long distance, 800 numbers, whatever, and your basic internet access, your fee that you pay for just having the internet. Before 2011, you had to have a tech plan if you're doing the internet access category. So for many people, I am sure, and I've seen this in the in-person sessions I've done, there's been lots of cheers and big smiles that you do not have to do a technology plan anymore. However, I will say tech plans are still a good idea. You definitely should have one if you have any sort of technology in your library because they help you just keep track of things. So we definitely recommend them in general. We have information, there's information on the USAC website about what the criteria are for the technology plans for them, and we have a worksheet on our website at the Commission that you could just kind of you can fill in the blanks. As long as you do all the parts of this worksheet, you have a technology plan that is approvable for E-rate purposes. So if you're doing priority 1, which as I said, most libraries are doing just that, you don't need to worry about 1. Only need to worry about it if you're doing priority 2. That's that internal connections when you're doing that construction or new buildings and the basic maintenance on those internal connections. So since most of our libraries don't do that, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but you've got this information here can help you. I do training here and can help you with it. I am your technology plan approver. So if you do write one, I would be the person you would send it to. I would also be a person who throughout, as you're writing it, I can look at it and give you advice and how to tweak it and what changes you might need to make. So definitely contact me if you will be doing one of these. And just like all of the other paperwork, you need to keep it for those 5 years. Especially if you previously were applying for internet access and you are required to have one before 2011, you still need to keep that tech plan and the approval letter you may have gotten on file because they can still go back 5 years, and this new rule of not having to do it for the internet access only started with last year, the 2011 funding year. So make sure you do keep copies of all of those just along with everything else in your E-rate files. Now, something else you would need to look into and pay attention to if you're doing internet access, anything internet related, is CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. If you are applying for E-rate discount on anything that is internet related, you do need to be in compliance with CIPA. This would be under priority 1, that third category, the internet access one, and on priority 2 if you're doing the internal connections on that. If you are just applying for telephone, you do not need to comply with CIPA. There's nothing on there that can be filtered or has anything to do with the internet. You do not have to comply with CIPA just for telephone. And you can pick and choose. You can just apply for your telephone and not go into the internet part of it at all. Now, CIPA requires 3 different basic things: a internet safety policy, a technology protection measure, that would be the actual filter software of some sort, and having some sort of public notification to your community that you are planning on doing this. And I'm going to get into some of the details of that in just a second here. There's information on the USAC website about CIPA that you can go there and see all of their detailed information. I know that sometimes this whole filtering or not filtering issue, it can be a problem in some areas. Some people are very sensitive about it, that we absolutely have to protect our children, or some people, other side of that is no, filtering is censorship and we will not do it. No, never, don't even talk to me about it. And that's perfectly fine. You can decide at your own local library level if you want to or not. You may have to deal with board members who have an opinion one way or the other and just do what they say. You may have community members that are putting pressure on you to go with it or not, and you'll just have to deal with how you're going to work through that. CIPA is a very short thing. It's not huge. It's about 12, 15 pages long, depending on where you print it out from. It's nicely written in that it's very vague in some areas, I've discovered. And E-rate is very strict in it takes things to the letter. They say, well, it says this, 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 and that's all we're going to say. We're not going to elaborate on it. So just, if you can just, to the letter of what it says, follow and comply with it, and still not offend anyone in your community because you are filtering, not block things that people still might definitely have to have access to, you could still be able to work CIPA and comply with it officially and get a discount on your internet access. Now, of course, I know many libraries, you get your internet for free for some reason through the city just provides it, or some local service provider out of the goodness of their heart is doing it for free, and that's perfectly fine. That's actually great. Good for you. I think that's awesome when they're willing to do that for you. And then you don't even have to worry about this at all. It's a moot point, at least as related to E-rate. Now, you may have other issues, other people in your community that have their own opinion on it, and you still have to deal with it. But what we're talking about here, and all I'm talking about, is how it is related to E-rate. Now, earlier this year, there was an update to CIPA. This is the first time they've really done a major change to it. New requirements. There's the Protecting Children in the 21st Century Act, which has now been made a new order by the FCC, and that's the number for FCC 11-125 if you want to go and read it. And it updated some of the things in CIPA. Now, you may hear a lot about this, and I'm going to go into a little bit of it so that you know. New requirements under CIPA for libraries, there are none. This is awesome. If you actually read the Protecting Children in the 21st Century Act and that new FCC report, actually, that itself, you can read the whole thing if you want to. It's pretty long, but there are no new requirements for public libraries at all. So if you are a library, you still follow the same rules we always have with CIPA. For schools, however, they made a bunch of changes. So that's most of the changes in there will be school related. And if you go look at it and read it, you will see it will say schools must da da da, schools must blah blah blah. So there are lots of changes there. And this is just the basics of it. As I said earlier, I am not the E-rate coordinator or assistant for schools, so I don't deal with any of this kind of stuff, so I don't pay attention to it, so I don't know a lot about the details of it. But as I said earlier, at the Department of Education, they do have the E-rate coordinator there who can get you all the details if you don't already know about them, that schools need to make changes. However, for the libraries, I'm mentioning this because you may have people in your community who may have heard about this change and this update and may be confused or not have the correct information about what needs to be done. As you can see here, that in addition to just having a policy now, schools now have to educate minors about appropriate online behavior. Cyberbullying, being in chat rooms, just being online in general, all of that. So they have to actually provide training now, courses, classes of some sort, to their students about this. Libraries do not. As I said, there's no new requirements about this, and when we get into the details, you'll see there's nothing in the basics of CIPA about providing for education. Also, schools, and this is something previously, but it's been codified now, also have to monitor students' activities online. Libraries do not. If you look at CIPA, it actually says, even in there, that schools must monitor the online activities. And now this new rule says they also now have to, in addition to monitoring them, help educate the minors. Libraries don't. And the reason I mention this is you may have members of your community have heard about this and will come into your library, your public library, and say, you have to teach my kid how to be online, and you can say to them, no, I don't. That's for schools, not for libraries. You need to go to the school and ask them. Now, you may, as a public library, choose to offer these kind of courses and to help the minors who are using your library, and that's great. Feel free to go ahead and do that, but it is not a requirement, and you're not being forced to do it in order to get any of this E-rate funding. That is for the schools. So just to be aware of it, so that you know in case anyone does come, that's why I'm mentioning it here. Now, the basics of CIPA that you do have to comply with are here. The Internet Safety Policy, the first thing you have to have. CIPA tells you the issues that you must address in your Internet Safety Policy, and these are all of them that they are. You must address what you're going to do about minors if accessing inappropriate materials, have some sort of safety for them when they are using anything online, the chat rooms, email. If these teens try to hack your computers or do anything else unlawful on them, you need to have some sort of a policy about how you deal with that. Keeping their personal information private so that you aren't giving out the private information about minors, that has to be something in your policy. And restricting their access to materials that is deemed harmful, and they do sort of basically tell you what's harmful. So this is all it says, that you must address these issues. FCC does not tell you how to address them, however. That is a local decision. Every community is different, as we know, and I've been teaching these E-rate classes all this month that I get there's 10 people in the room, there's 10 different discussions about whether they do or don't filter and do CIPA, and whether they, and why not. But you just have to decide locally how you will address them. They're just if you do want to be compliant with this. So they won't tell you how, just that you must have something in your policy that relates to all of these things. However you want to, it has to be in there. Now, you may already have something like this. Lots of libraries, just for ease of running the library, have some sort of acceptable use policy or a computer use policy. That is, if you're using our computers, and here's what you can and can't do. So if you already have something in place that happens to somewhere in it address all of these things that CIPA says you want to, you do not have to write something new and special just for E-rate. You can use the one you currently have, just as long as it says something about all of these issues that it wants you to address. The second thing that CIPA needs for you to have is a technology protection measure of some sort. This would be your filter. It can be an actual software product on your computer, something web-based, something on each individual computer, something that's at your network level, whatever, just something that blocks or filters internet access. And specifically what CIPA says is you must protect against visual depictions that are obscene, child pornography, or harmful to minors. And this is important. It says visual, not words, not text. CIPA says you must filter against pictures. Now, think about that. Does anybody know of any filtering software out there that does that? No, there really aren't any products out there that can filter based on photos and visual. That was one of the concerns that ALA had with CIPA et al. Was, how are we supposed to do this? Nothing exists that does it. You've got to be kidding. And that's true. It is hard. So what we have to do in order to somehow protect against these visual depictions is use what we do have available, which is filters that use words. They filter by either words that might be mentioned on the page, or a certain URL, a certain site, a location that you know is bad, that kind of thing. And the odds are, if you know those, you're then protecting against the pornography that there shouldn't be on there. So we just have to kind of work with it. You can also put at any level you need to. There's many filters out there that have low, medium, high levels of filtering. Some are very detailed, and you just type in your certain blocked, blocked sites that you know, here's all the bad ones, or as you come upon them, you know that they're bad ones. And then you can also unblock the ones that aren't. Like if by accident your filter is blocking information about breast cancer because of the word breast being in it, you can go in and unblock those breast cancer sites and just say, doesn't matter about what words are on those pages, do this. You also have to, and this is another thing that I think some people miss that is actually in CIPA, you have to be able to disable it. whatever filter you have to be able to easily and quickly disable it. For adults in CIPA are anyone 17 of age and older. That's their official definition. Engage in, as they say, bona fide research or other lawful purposes. That's in quotes because that's the actual wording. Now, as is with anything that people are doing at your library, you do not ask them what they're doing. They can just come to you and say, hey, I need this page unblocked. And if it's not something illegal, it's not pornography, you can go ahead and do it. You do not have to interview them and find out, well, are you really doing this? As long as it's that second bit there really covers anything, other lawful purposes. As long as they're not asking you to go to something that's illegal like child pornography, you don't even have to say anything. You just say, okay, yes, here, let me go and on our server, and boom, your computer is now unblocked. So that is one thing that hopefully will help some people who are concerned about the whole censorship issue. You do have to unblock, and they all have to do is say, hey, I need this unblocked, and you go ahead and do it, and it's all good. Same thing here. You need to document that you have a filter and that you did put one in place. Now, this is the kind of thing you might need to keep for longer than 5 years. If you installed a filter on your computer and first purchased it and set it all up 10 years ago, you don't have to every year redo that, but if USAC does decide to come to you and say, can you prove to us that you have one, you're going to need that receipt from 10 years ago when you purchased it or whatever it was, that documentation. So that's the kind of thing you'd have to keep forever, not just for the 5 years. Also, the third thing, the public notice. This is also something you just have to keep forever as well. When you first did put filters on, you had to have some sort of announcement, an item on your board meeting, something like that, that discussed or at least mentioned, we are planning on doing this. Anyone want to say anything about it? Okay, let's have a discussion if necessary. That same kind of thing here. Keep that documentation. If it was a board meeting from 10 years ago, you need to keep those board meeting minutes in with your E-rate stuff. Make a copy of it and put it in there, so if anyone does ask from USAC, you'll be able to pull it out and say, yes, in whatever year, 1999, we actually did this, and here's where it says that we did it. Okay. Any questions about tech plans or CIPA or filtering that I could answer for you right now? Or comments or suggestions or anything you have about anything we've discussed so far? No? Okay. And we will just move along to the actual forms. Everything we've talked about so far has been, before you even start submitting a form, just the basic information about how the program works, how big of a discount you can get, what kind of things can I get a discount on, the things I have to prepare ahead of time to be able to use to do my applications. Now, we're going to get into each individual form that is out there and how you would do them. We don't have time in a session today to go through every single form field by field, but we're going to go through some of the basics of it, what they're for, and highlight a few things that will help you get over some things that I know have been issues for some people. So the first form in the E-rate process is the Form 470. This is a form you can submit anytime you want to. There is no opening or anything for when you can do it. There is a there is a deadline, as we talked about before. And what the 470 serves as is it officially opens a competitive bidding process. You are announcing to the world in general, basically, that you are looking for someone to provide you with telephone service, local long distance, internet access service, whatever. Now, you may have a regular company you work with, your regular service provider, and that's fine. They still need to be notified, too, that you're planning on participating in E-rate. So this would let them know that that's something you're going to be doing. If you've always done it every year, it'll be a basic process that you'll go through with them, and you'll all know what you're doing. If it's the first time ever, they will be notified. They'll be able to find out that you are planning on doing this as well. On this form, it's probably, as I've been told from many people who do E-rate, one of the easiest of all the forms to do. All you basically have on here is your contact information for you, like what library you are, and what service you are wanting to get. Do you want to get local phone service, long distance phone service, internet access, whatever it is you want to receive. There's nothing on this form yet about the discounts or the amounts that you're going to get or anything like that. It's the very basic, easy information on here. Um, Now, the 470, as I briefly mentioned earlier, has to be posted and out there for at least 28 days before you pick who you're going to go with as your service provider. This gives a free and open bidding process for any vendors to contact you. You may or may not have someone contact you. You may just have your own local company, the one you've always used for years and years, and it's just them, and they contact you, and you're like, yep, cool, we'll go with you, and it's a done deal. But you do still have to go through the process, go through the motions of doing all these forms, even if you're never going to even receive any bids from anyone else. But you do have to have that 28 days before you can do your second form, and that's that 471. And based on the deadline for the 471 that we know is in March, February 21st for this particular funding year is the last day you can do a Form 470 and still have 28 days before the final deadline for the 471. Now remember, these dates vary from year to year. So this is only for this year, funding year 2012. Last year the dates were different, and next year funding year they'll be different again. So this is just for this year. You do not have to wait for February 21st, and I would strongly say don't. If you wait till the last minute, it's going to take a lot longer for your form to get processed. If you go online to do it on the last minute, their system will be overwhelmed. You may have trouble just connecting at all. I've had it happen. And there's no reason to wait. You can do a 470 today. As soon as we're done here, you can go off and do it if you haven't yet, and get it done and get it out there. And then you're way ahead of the game. You just got to wait that 28 days and wait for the window to open for the 471, and then to be able to submit that. So there's no reason to wait till the last minute to submit this. If you do get bids, keep track of them. Just hold on to them all and wait those 28 days, and then we'll get into how you look at those in a second here, and then you'll see who you want to pick. Price has to be the primary factor in choosing a company, and I'll show you a little bit about that later as well. It doesn't have to be the only factor, and please do not ever just use price as your only choice if you do have multiple vendors. There's lots of other things you want to look at when you are thinking about picking someone. Now, this is online, the first screen that you get to when you go to create a Form 470. And to look up your library or institution, you can put in a zip code and get all of the institutions that are in your area, or your billed entity number. Every library who has ever done E-rate before has been assigned a billed entity number. If you're doing it for the first time this year, and maybe your previous director did it, but it was like 10 years ago, and they were so frustrated they just stopped, you'll still have a billed entity number of some sort that you were assigned way back then, and that's the same one you'll use now. If you don't have one, I'm going to show you in just a second where you can go and actually look it up. You can apply to get one. So once you put that information in, then you'll get the pages where you put in your basic contact info, what you're looking for. Some things I want to bring to your attention to make sure that you pay attention, that you get this in here correctly. At the bottom of the first screen, they ask you what your preferred mode of contact is. This is in case USAC needs to call you or contact you and ask you more questions, if they need to get more information, if they want to clarify something. You can choose telephone, fax, or email, whichever way you think is the best way to get in touch with you. And make sure you pick whatever it will be, something that you'll be able to respond to quickly. Generally, when they contact you, they give you 15 days to respond. So you don't have a huge amount of time. So if they call or fax, you got to make sure you get 15 days, and email. If you've chosen email and you're going on vacation at some point, if you're going to be gone for longer than a 15-day chunk of time, make sure someone else is checking your email. Someone else can take a look at and be able to answer any questions they might have. The other thing on here that's been added that's new to the forms as of last year is this consultant information, consultant registration number. You can hire companies to help you complete your forms. You may have been contacted by some. I have been here, which I find very amusing. Being the state E-rate coordinator who helps you guys do these forms, I find it entertaining that they're contacting me to help me submit my forms. They just don't know. But everyone who is an official legal consultant is assigned a registration number by USAC, and they should have that. If they don't have one for you, don't use them. But that's what you would put in here if you have one. If you don't want to use one, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. These forms, you can do them all by yourself. They're not that, some of them are not very difficult to use. It might take some time. You can also contact me for help. and I help you for free. It's just my job to do that here. So, but if you do, this was something that was confusing some people because this was new. They didn't know who their consultant was, and if you didn't use one, then there isn't, and you just leave it blank. Not a problem. Now, after you fill out the basic information in the form, you're going to get this page where it assigns your application a number, a very long number here. You want to either print out this page, write it down, whatever. You'll need this number if you need to go in, as I showed you earlier, and continue an incomplete form. If you stop in the middle, you'll need that application number to go in and start where you pick up where you left off. Now, if you don't have this, if you forget to get it, that's okay. You'll just have to start over at the beginning because you won't be able to find the one that you saved, that you had started and had it finished. If you have one that you started and you've lost or forgot this application number, it'll just die off. If you don't continue or finish it, they don't care. They just ignore it, and they only look at the one that you actually finished to the end. But keep this number so that you can then go back to it again. One last thing, the end of all the forms, there's a certification section. This is where you just check off all the legalese. Yes, I agree. This is all true and information. Yes, this is going to be a library or a school who uses it, whatever. As you can see, the first one here, it's for number 16. This is where you're picking if you're a school or a library. Schools is the first one. Libraries is the second, so you just check whichever is appropriate. And the second option here, 17, this is about that technology plan. If you're only applying for Priority 1 services, the basic telephone, basic local and long distance, and internet access, you do not need a plan, so you just check that second box there that no plan is required. And then after this, there's a whole bunch of other ones. I didn't put all of them on the screenshot because they're all just basically the legalese, as I said. Yes, this is all true and real. Yes, I will follow all the rules in the program, all that kind of thing. Check all the boxes. Read them, of course, to make sure you know what you're checking. And then your signature goes on this part as well, your official signature for the form. After you submit the form, USAC will mail you a letter. This will be for the upcoming year one of those things that comes to you on the yellow paper, and it's your receipt notification letter. It summarizes everything that you put on your Form 470. Check this to make sure it's correct. Read it over, compare it to what you entered, make sure it's all right. You can make changes to it if you need to correct anything. They call these ministerial and clerical errors, the basic kind of stuff that you might make a typo of. I actually did that on our 470 last year. I put, instead of 402, I typed 202 for our area code. I don't know. Just a little typo, and when I got the 470 letter, that's when I first noticed that I had done that, and I was able to just send it to them with a correction on it, not a problem. But double check it just to make sure everything is correct. Some basic terms here that will have to go along with doing the 470. On that letter will be your allowable vendor selection or contract date. Acronym ACD. This is the date 28 days after the 470 was officially received by them. So they will tell you on this letter, you can submit your 471, the second form, on so-and-so date, and they'll give you a date. And that's cool, so you just have to make sure you wait till that date to submit it. However, you also have to be in the window for the 471. So in addition to being 28 days, be in that window. Build entity number, this is information about that number that you could first fill in for logging into the form in the first place. If you don't have one, you can call the Schools and Libraries Division at their 800 number that I have on there, and they can just assign you one for the first time. So you would have to have one before you can do a form at all, so you have to just call them to get one. If you don't have one, or if you know that your library has done it before but you don't have a clue what yours is, I will show you on the USAC website where you can actually look this up. There it goes. On the USAC page, over on the left-hand side is all of their menu, and lowerish part of it is a link for search tools. And this gives you a whole bunch of ways that you can search different things related to E-rate. What deadlines there are, if a 470 has been posted, the 471 application status, all of these things can be searched from here. But if you scroll down, Oh, there it is. Build entity number search. This is where you can look up your library and see what your build entity number is. So if you think that someone has done it before, but you have no record of what the heck this number is, go here and you'll be able to look it up there. Some other things that you can look up here as well is service providers. They have contacts at each of their companies that are in charge of E-rate. I've had some people mention to me that I call my service provider and just whoever I get on the phone doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about, and they don't even know who to transfer me to. You can go here and find out who is the official contact person at all the different service providers that has been, they have told USAC that. Okay. So the third thing here is a personal identification number, your PIN number. You can be assigned as an individual a PIN number to use to officially electronically sign all of the forms if you submit them online. This is then so you don't have to do anything in paper. You can use a PIN number. Now, if you've been assigned one before, you can just go ahead and start using it. If someone else at your library, like the previous director or the previous person who's in charge, if they were assigned a PIN number, you have to get a new one for yourself. You can't use one that someone else is using. PIN numbers are specific to individual people who are submitting the forms. Build entity numbers are for the library itself. So build entity number stays the same throughout as staff changes in the library. That never changes. But PIN number is to an individual. The way to obtain a PIN number is to submit your first form, whatever form it is you're doing in the process, in paper. And it can be any of the forms, this 470, the 471, the 486, no matter when in the process that you happen to be the new person doing it. You can just submit the next form in paper, and then they will assign you a PIN. When you do the form in paper, there is that certification page has where you actually sign your signature with pen. Once they have that, what they call your wet signature on file, once they have it just once, they then send you a little slip of paper that issues you a PIN number. It's just a mishmash of letters and numbers. And then from every form forward after that one, you can then use that PIN number to officially sign all your forms online and never have to send one in the mail again. Being able to submit forms online is a really great thing, especially, and I know I said earlier, it's hard to do things on the deadlines because the system can get bogged down. But if you're worried about getting things in by a postmarked by a certain date and having to run to the post office, the paper one, it's much easier when you can just sit in front of your computer somewhere and hit submit and do it that way. You don't have to worry about, did I get it postmarked in time? You can do it online. So if you don't have one yet for yourself, do your first form. Right now, your first form may be the 470. It doesn't have to be that one. Like I said, it can be any of them. Send it in paper, they'll send you the PIN, and then from then forward for the life, as long as you are at the library doing E-rate every year, you can just use that PIN number to officially sign and certify all of your forms. Now, some information about this competitive bidding process that you're opening. Then that's what your 470 does. Some municipalities require an RFP, or request for proposal. You'll need to check and see if yours does or not. Many don't. I'm not sure what the average is, but this is just to get receiving bids for any sort of services. Some municipalities require that you do an actual separate RFP. If your city or town says, nope, we don't care, your 470 serves that same purpose. It's got the same information that an RFP would have, who you are, what you're asking for from any service providers. Now, the open bidding process, the fair and open bidding process that you're doing here, that's what that 28 days is for. You need to have enough time for any vendor who wants to contact you. When you submit your 470, it is posted publicly up on the USAC website, and that's where vendors go to see who's looking for service. And they see if there's anyone in an area where they serve, ideally, and then they contact you with their bids. You have to treat them all the same. Don't give anyone preferential treatment. They cannot help you submit or fill out the information in any of your forms, in your 470. So if you're a service provider who's your regular company comes to you and says, here, just write this on the form so that I can, then it'll be what I want to. You tell them, no, thank you. That's fine. I can do it myself. If they do help you, that's illegal, and you or they will be in trouble, and, well, you won't get funded. So just be careful about that. Don't let them get involved in it. Something you do yourself. Ask me for help if you want to. I'm not a vendor, so I can help you submit with any questions you have about doing your forms. As I said, you must use cost as the primary factor in choosing who you go with. It doesn't have to be the only one, but it does have to be the most cost-effective bid, and everything is taken into consideration. And if you do get multiple bids, keep track of everything you got and the reasoning why you picked the one you did, just in case USAC comes back later to ask you, well, why did you pick so-and-so company over this one? So this is an example of how you could do a comparison if you did receive bids from multiple vendors. Now, this is not the only way you can do it. It just gives you an idea of how you can compare and the way the SLD wants you to compare. Now, of course, as I said, price has to be the most important factor in this. So in this case, what you do is you assign points to each item that you think is important into choosing who your vendor will be. Making sure that price has the most points assigned to it relative to everything else. Everything else you want to compare to use to compare is up to you. These are just some examples of things you could use. You do not have to use these factors. Whatever you think is important. Are they a local vendor? Are they good with the environment? Prices for things that you do not get a discount on. Prices for those ineligible services. Are they better at in that area? So you would just decide what you think is important to you and put it into this kind of a matrix here, and then assign points when you evaluate each of the different vendors to see who comes out on top. Now, as you can see here, for price, which needs to be just the most important thing that you take into consideration, vendor 2 actually got a full 30 points out of 30 points that we assigned to them, 30 points available. However, when you look at all of the other factors that you as a library chose as being important, vendor 3 comes out with a higher total points. So you would then choose vendor 3 as the vendor you would go with, even though the vendor 2 was cheaper in cost. Everything else taken in consideration, they were not as good as vendor 3, and that's the one that you'd go with. Now, when you do these comparisons, you will need to keep track of everything and keep a record of how you did do the comparison and what you chose, what your decision-making process was somewhere, in case anyone at USAC SLD decides to come back in an audit or question and ask, so how did you choose vendor so-and-so over the other vendor? Now, after you close the competitive bidding process, that is when you can actually start doing this evaluation. This would be after that 28 days has passed from when you posted your Form 470. Then you wait your 28 days, and then you can do your 471 and use all of that information with the competitive bidding to choose who your service provider is going to be. Signing a contract, and then actually going on to doing the 471, which is the second form in the process. The 471 you use to report to USAC who you chose as your service provider and what services you will actually be getting to them, much more specific on 471 with this information, exactly what the services are in much more detail. This is also where you would actually, this is where at this point where you would finally put in the discount calculation that you did previously for figuring out using the National School Lunch Program data and whether you're urban or rural, that information. This is where you finally now enter that information onto a form to USAC. And if there's anything that you need to certify your compliance with, that's what you do here as well. The application filing window opens on January 9th and closes on March 20th. I'm not sure exactly when you guys lost the sound, so I may repeat some stuff here. This is where you give more details on the 471 about when, what exactly you chose to go with your service provider. If you have your 470 certifications that you missed submitting, you can do that. Some people, for some reason, sometimes, especially when filing online more often, they'll submit the form and then forget to do the certification because it's kind of an extra step, so to speak. So you can always get that in after the fact as well. You'll see, if you notice on the screenshot I had of the filing online, there was a button to certify. You can go back and do that after you've submitted the form. On the Form 471, this is the top of the form. The 470 looks very similar, basic information about you as a library. However, there's something new on this that I wanted to bring to your attention that also did confuse people. last year it was new. FCC registration number. It's up there right after, at the very, before you even put in your library's information. This is something new they added to the form. FCC registration number. Anyone who's ever done business, quote unquote, with the FCC must obtain a registration number, and they're actually just assigned. You are assigned one whenever you did. You may or may not know that you have one. I didn't know that we had one, but I went and looked it up, and hey, there it was. They're now asking for that number to also be included when you do your 471. They have a website you can go to look up your library's registration number, or to request one if you don't have one. If you and I already had this happen with one library. If you look it up, then and nothing comes up for your library, then you can just submit to receive one. And you don't have to. It's very basic information, just who the library's basic info and contact person's name. You don't have to tell them why you're requesting a number or anything. It's just very basic, and then they will assign you one, and then you'll be able to put that in your 471. Similar to the 470, the 471 also has a page that is assigning numbers to it. The 471 is assigned an application number and a security code number. This one has a second number. And on the page, when that comes up, it has here, you'll see it says bright red important, which is great because it lets you know. You want to print out this page, write down the numbers, whatever it is you want to do to make sure that you have a hold of these numbers. You'll need both these numbers, both the application number and the security code number, in order to log in again to your 471. If, just like on the 470, if you have to stop in the middle and need to go back and finish anything on it. So if you need to pick it up in the middle, you'll need both of those numbers to get back into it. Same thing as before. If you don't get those numbers down, you'll just have to start over. USAC doesn't know the security code that was assigned to your library for this form, so you can't contact them to ask, what is my security code? They won't be able to tell you. You'll just have to start over again, just like with the 470, if you happen to miss getting this information. But please just try not to. Right as soon as I hit this page, I just hit print. You see there at the bottom there's a print now button that even gives you that option right there to do a quick print out of this particular page. Now, in addition to the form itself, there's one question that's item number 21, where you give this is where you give the full description of the services that you're requesting. This is a separate attachment. When you do the paper forms, it's just there. It's a form you can fill out. When you do the online forms, it's like an extra step that you'd go and now do your item 21 attachment. And this is where you say more. In the 470, it's a very basic, I'm looking for phone service. But on here, you give more detailed explanation of this is for one line into the library for whatever purposes. If you need to expand on what you're doing with the internet information, this is also where you would include, if you need to copy, to help document how much it's going to cost you, copies of your bills, your phone bills, that will give them the amounts that you might be paying for the next year. All that kind of information goes along with the item 21. You can submit these online, and you will prompt you to do that right after you do your form online. Or you can fax it to them, email it, or mail it in paper. They'll accept this any way that you can get it to them. And on their website, they have very detailed information about exactly what can be in an item 21, and they've got some examples, which is really nice. So you can go and see how have other people worded this kind of service that they're receiving. So they give you some good examples. Definitely recommend going and looking at those. Now, after you have sent in your 471 and your item 21 attachment to it, you will get a receipt acknowledgement letter. And this will summarize, same thing as the 471, what's on the form. Check it, make sure it's all correct. What's also nice about what they will do also is if you've sent in the 471 and you've missed something else, like you haven't done the item 21 or you haven't done the certification, you'll get a letter that says that instead. It will say, we have received your form 471, but we do not have your item 21 attachments. Please make sure you go back and do those. So you read these letters when they come from USAC on the colored paper, because it will tell you what they are trying to say. Sometimes it's like, yes, we got everything, you're good to go, and sometimes it will have information telling you, oops, we still need this. This also has those ministerial and clerical errors that you can correct if necessary. And if you need to change your level of funding, this is a point where you can do that as well. Sometimes your service provider changes prices or decides they're going to suddenly give you something for free that they weren't when you first submitted the form. But this is where you can put in that information as well. On the form, on the letter, each of your funding requests will be assigned a funding request number. Each request will depend on what you did on the 471. You may have put in a funding request for your local phone, your long distance phone, and your internet access. That would be 3 different funding requests that you submitted on the 471 form, and then they will, on the letter they send back to you, assign each of them a funding request number, so you'll have 3 funding request numbers. However many you have will depend on how many requests, how many services you asked for. Just like a library or an institution applying for E-rate has a billed entity number, service providers have service provider ID numbers. SPIN numbers is what they're called. And this is a number that you just type in, and when you type it in on the online form, it poof pops in the information about the service provider. On the paper form, you just write it in and fill it out in there. You can also look up your service provider's SPIN number on the USAC website. On that same search page that I was showing you earlier for looking at billed entity number, there's a service provider search for actual SPIN numbers as well. Now, I want to talk just a little bit about those ministerial and clerical errors, because this is something that's really important. A lot of people are very, I think, wary of doing E-rate and doing some of the forms. What if I do something wrong? Lots of things that you do on there, if you make errors, they can be fixed. And this is what they call those. They had a specific order the FCC released that these kind of basic things like typos and math errors, that kind of thing, you can go ahead and make any of those changes if you need to. Up until your funding commitment letter is sent to you saying, yes, you got your money, you can make these changes. So you do have a certain amount of, you do have a deadline for it. And these are some basic things, as I said, spelling errors, simple math errors, typos, changing a contact person. Like I said before, you could do that. You can get your PIN number by submitting a form yourself, but if whoever the contact person just has changed, you need to get that information to them, you can do it this way. As I said earlier, if the amount that you're going to be requesting on those funding requests has to be changed, you can correct those errors. Or if there's anything that you misentered or forgot to enter, you can do that as well on this. And on the letters, each letter that you get, the receipt notification letter for the 470 and the receipt acknowledgement letter for the 471, they give instructions on how to do this. So on each one of them, it will not only have the here is what you had submitted on the form, it will say here's what you submitted, and if anything in here is wrong, here's how to fix them. It will say, on the ones that I did, it actually, on the form itself, it had an area where you could just write in what the corrected numbers was. Like I just had to put the correct area code, and then it says, and now fax or email it to this particular address or this particular phone number. So it will actually have just the instructions on each one of those letters to make any corrections on each of those. So don't be worried about if you have any problems with or errors you think you might have done. You'll always be able to make changes to them on those letters. Now, after they've got your 471, then they start reviewing it. They have a section, a group of people at USAC called Program Integrity Assurance, PIA. These PIA reviewers are the ones that actually look at all the applications and see if they're accurate. See if it's all correct as far as the eligibility of who's applying, that the services you're applying for are correct, are eligible, that you've submitted all the documentation that you need to in order for them to make the decision. They may contact you for more information. They may not. You may never hear from them and just get your letter and be done with it. But they may contact you to send you another part of a phone bill or more details about where you got your school lunch numbers or whatever. This is where they'll come and ask you, and that's where that 15 days comes into. Normally when you get contacted by a PIA reviewer, they'll give you 15 days to get back to them. So make sure that this is one, make sure you pay attention to when they are contacting you. Now, this process of PIA review can take a long time. As it said in the timesheet, on the timeline earlier, it can take up to 8 months from when you submit it. The final deadline for submitting the 471 is March 20th, so they might go into November, December until you get your actual funding letter. After when this whole process is over. So, and you'll note that that actually falls after the official the funding year start date of July 1st. So you do need to be prepared to pay your full price. If you don't have your funding letter yet, you're not getting your discount yet. If you do get your letter after the year started, the funding year, then they will reimburse you back for those missing months. You'll just get it after the fact. If, after PIA review has gone through and looked at everything on your application, it will then send you a funding commitment decision letter. And this will tell you if you're funded or not and how much. They may reduce your funding for some reason. They may change it. Who knows? They may decline something. You might get more than one letter if they're looking at different parts of your application at different times, especially Priority 1 versus Priority 2 applications. You may have more than one of these. Just pay attention to what you get. This also comes in that colored paper. This year it'll be yellow. Look at this, and this letter will tell you the next thing you need to do is to do that 46. Each letter you get from them tells you what this form was and then prompts you of what the next thing is that you need to do. If you're not happy with it, as I said earlier, you got a question about it, you don't think it was done correctly, you can appeal your, if you were denied. They have information on their USAC website about this, so it will tell you what to do, what information they need from you, who you send letters to at USAC. They want to give you the money, like I said, so I definitely recommend if you're unhappy with something, put in an appeal. I've had multiple libraries do it and get everything fixed and get their money. So if it seems like it's not right, definitely go ahead and do it. And I can help you with any of this too if you need to. It can be a little intimidating, I'm sure. I know. So definitely contact me if you need some help with that. After you do get that funding commitment decision letter, right away you would do your Form 486. As long as it's after the funding year has started, or even beforehand, you can do the 46, just notifying them that services have started. Basically saying, thank you for giving me my money, and yes, I have actually contracted and started receiving whatever it was that I got from the phone company or the internet company. If you had a technology plan for this Priority 2 services, this is where you would put in your TPA's technology plan approver. That would have been me. And if you had to comply with CIPA for doing internet access or internal connections. All they have you do with, as far as compliance on the forms is just check a box. So you do not need to send them your technology plan. You do not need to send them any of your proof that you have complied with CIPA. At this point, it's just checking off boxes saying you are doing it. You only send them all that documentation if they come back to you and ask for it later. So when you're doing the forms, you just do the forms. The deadline to do a 46, you get 120 days after your service starts or after you receive your decision letter. So you have a good chunk of time to get this one in. Shouldn't be a problem with getting that in on time. You also get a notification letter back letting you know that they've received it. So same as the first two forms, they'll send you something back saying that it has been received and everything's good. Any questions at this point about these first these forms that we've submitted so far? Nope. Okay. The last step in the process of a funding year is the invoicing. This is your Form 472 or 474. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, you do have two choices of how you can receive your discount, receive your actual money. The bare form is the 472. This is if you pay your bills in full and then you get a refund check afterwards, either after each month or at the end of the funding year for the entire year. This is the form that you would file yourself. However, your other choice is getting a discount on your bills directly from your service provider. If you choose that way to get your discount, then the service provider submits the 474 form, the service provider invoice to USAC, and then they get the money from USAC and they pass on the discount to you. So you have a choice of which way to go. At this decision would depend a lot on how the money is handled at your library, how your maybe your town clerk may handle money, your city may handle money. A lot of libraries do not like to do the bare form because they have told me if a check just comes to the city from somewhere, it just goes in the city general fund and the library never sees it. So that may not be the best choice for you if that's how yours works, that if the library doesn't actually benefit from the discount. then that's not good. You may want to do the getting a discount on your bill. And for either way of these, you will talk to your service provider before you decide which way you're going to submit. Discuss, contact them, or they may contact you. For me at the commission, Windstream calls me actually, or emails me and asks, which way would you like to do it, and then we work from that. But you can contact them yourself as well. But work with your service provider to figure out which way you want to do it, and then have this correct form submitted. The bear submitted by you if you want to check. The SPY, that's how that's pronounced, submitted by the service provider if you want them just to give you a discount on your bill. And like I said earlier, if your funding commitment decision letter comes after the funding year has actually started and you've already been paying bills, that the service provider will either give you a check that's for the amount of months you missed, or they'll issue a credit onto your bill for future months. But they will have to somehow still get that money for you. They just hadn't been able to give you yet because nobody knew if you had been approved or not. If you do submit a bear, you do get a letter letting you know that it's been processed. Both you and the service provider get it, so they know as well. And then after you've decided which way to go, you will start receiving quarterly reports of the discounts that you've been receiving, both the bears and the SPYs, whether you're getting their check or a discount on your bills. If you totally go with check and you don't do it to the end of the year, you won't get a report. You only get a report for when they've actually dispersed any money to you. So you won't ever get a report that's just zeros. I said earlier that everything you get from USAC from them comes on colored paper. For whatever reason, this one report does not. This will come on just a regular white piece of paper. It comes in the same kind of envelope from the same place, but for whatever reason, it's whatever printer system it's printed out from, this is the one thing that doesn't. So just pay attention. Anything that comes with a logo, the USAC logo on it, open it and pay attention to it. This will tell you what your discount is you should be getting, the money they've been sent out. Compare, if you're getting those discounts on your bills, compare what this report says to what your service provider is giving you a discount on your bill to make sure they're doing it correctly. The way it works when they do their form is USAC actually sends them the money, and then they discount your bill that amount. Make sure they're discounting your bill correctly. Just to play it safe, just take a look at it, compare it, and make sure it's going through correctly. And that is the last form in the process. Any questions at this point? We're almost wrapped up, actually. Any questions about any of the forms or anything that you are eligible for, or how to do any of these calculations? No? Okay. I just wanted to show you some things on the websites here. I'll jump out to the Schools and Libraries Division has news briefs that they send weekly that you can sign up for. Here. There we go. This is the main page. That's what the URL is in your PowerPoint, where they have all of their news briefs archived, either by topic and by the date. I definitely recommend signing up for this. It comes out once a week, and it just gives you any news or information that's coming up with that week. For example, when they announced that the application filing window was decided. When deadlines are coming up, that'll be announced in here. Anything interesting coming up. Money they've given away. And then sometimes there'll be little articles about how to do something. Like you can see here some of their topics. They had articles about calculating your discounts or complying with CIPA or document retention. So there'll be all sorts of different things on here. Take a look at it, read it. If it doesn't apply, that interests you, you can delete it. You can just click here to subscribe, and you just give them your email address, and that's it. You're not a service provider, so you would choose the second option here as a schools and libraries person to receive that. They also have, that's the second thing that's on your PowerPoint here, some tip sheets that are just one-page PDFs with some basic instructions and information about various things. Some of these are old, some of these are newer, but some of this is the processes have not changed any, so they're still very good, so definitely take a look at those. There is also an application process flow chart, and I'll blow this up a little bit here. This is really nice. I like this because it shows you as an applicant all the different forms that you need to submit, when and what they are for, and then what you'll get back from USAC. But it also shows what the service provider has to do. You're submitting all these forms, going through all this process. They have to go through a process as well. They have to apply for their SPIN. They have to keep certifying annually that they're doing it. They have to do their side of it, doing the forms. They get things back from USAC. So both of you on either side have forms and things that you need to be working on. But for some people, I think that their visual is a nice way. It's very similar to that the timeline that I have, but it's a little more visual of that same kind of thing. Now, if you do need assistance, you can call USAC. They have what they call their Client Service Bureau is their customer service, and they have an 800 number there that you can use, or you can submit a question online. They don't have an email address to send to, but they have an online form that then makes it an email to them. So feel free to contact them if you want to, and then also just giving you once again the USAC website's main URL. Feel free to call them for help, and if you need to, not a problem. Or you can, I don't worry, it doesn't bother me. You don't have to go through me first before you go to them. You can just go direct to them. Sometimes, depending on what your question is, I may refer you to them anyways. And I may say, I don't have the ability to figure that out. Let me pass you on to them. But you can also contact me here as well. At the Library Commission, Christopher's at Nebraska.gov, or call the 800 number here and just ask for me, and I can help you as well. The last thing, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. If you want me to unmute you, raise your hand, and I can do that. If you have any questions or comments or anything, please do. While I'm waiting to see if anything comes through, I wanted to show you, this is the E-rate webpage, the one that's on that last slide that we have here on the Library Commission site. I've linked to a lot of things on the USAC site. Their site is great, but some things that I like to pull out maybe were a little buried. I've got a link to finding the forms online, to downloading the forms and their instructions, and I'll show you that just here. This is where I was talking about getting the PDFs of the forms and their instructions. Very easy. They're just single PDFs for each one. As I said, definitely recommend using these instructions as you're doing your forms. What I've also done is here, a lot of the links that I gave you in the PowerPoint, they come from off of here, where I've linked to them directly to help you. And my browser is nicely freezing. There I go. So to look up your FCC registration number, that new thing on the 471, I've got a link to their page. To look up the school and lunch, free and reduced lunch numbers from the Department of Education, your urban and rural classification, that help guide for calculating your discount, a direct link to the eligible services list, information about doing your Item 21 attachments, all those extra things that I talked about in the presentation, I've got links to right here from our website as well. Also, I want to point out to you, I mentioned the schools and libraries news briefs. We in Nebraska have a E-rate mailing list as well, our own, that you can sign up for, and this is for both schools and libraries. We don't have a separate one for each of them, so you can sign up for this if you aren't already. Mostly what's posted on here is information about, here's new libraries that have received their money, here's a deadline coming up, here's some libraries and schools who have not sent in so-and-so form. So that's really nice. If you have missed something, the people at the Department of Education actually monitor this and will send out a message to the mailing list when a deadline is coming up soon. For example, when 486 deadline is coming up, or the invoicing form deadline is coming up. This is, as I said, this is all public information. They go look it up and they post it out there for anyone to see. If a library is on this list, I will pull out that information, and then I'll also email that library directly. So if you're on this mailing list, that's great. You'll get those notifications. But if you get an email specifically directly from me saying you are on this list because you have not submitted a form, definitely look at it, because that means you are actually on there. I've pulled out your libraries for a reason, because you're not haven't submitted the form yet. Now, as I said, this session has been recorded, so we will be posting it out, and you guys will all get emails letting you know when the recording is ready. But you'll notice here at the top of our page, I've got previous year's recordings as well, and I've labeled them for which funding year they are for. So you can go ahead and look at these previous recordings if you want to, but please note that any of the dates that are on there are that I've mentioned are going to be for 2010 or 2011, those specific funding years, not for 2012 as this one was. So, does anybody have any questions, comments, anything you wanted me to show you that I haven't yet? Anything you're hoping I mentioned that I haven't yet? Because we are wrapped up with everything I needed to share with you. We do have some time left, though, if you do have any questions or anything you want to know. Okay. Oh, Cynthia, you have a question? You can type in your question if you want to, or do you have a microphone? I can unmute you. Oh, okay. No problem. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody's got any questions right off the bat right now. That is fine. You guys know where to find me. If you do have any questions, if you need any help filling out your forms, that's what I'm here for. I can help you with that. So call or email me with anything you're doing. Go right now if you haven't already and submit your 470 for the upcoming year. There's no reason to delay for that one. It's your basic info. Get it out there, and then you know that you've got your 28 days in there with no problem. Well, if there's nothing else, then I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for attending. I hope that this was helpful. It was a lot of information in a short period of time, I realize, but hopefully with the PowerPoints, the other information I gave you will help you get through the process. You're welcome, Joyce. So, thank you very much. Bye-bye.